Captain Olivia Hawkins starts her historic first day leading the NYPD's 12th precinct, reflecting on her journey from Harlem to this landmark role. Across town, rookie officer Emily Chen begins her first patrol with high hopes, despite doubts about her seasoned partner, Sergeant Jack Sullivan. As Olivia faces internal skepticism and Emily navigates a tense patrol, both women encounter the challenges and realities of their roles in a changing police force. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. The sun had just begun to break through the horizon when Captain Olivia Hawkins stirred from a restless night's sleep. The soft light of dawn crept into her room, casting a pale glow on the walls as Olivia wrestled with the weight of the day ahead. As she swung her legs out of bed, the coldness of the wooden floor sent a shiver up her spine. At 42 years old, Olivia was on the brink of confronting the most significant challenge of her career, assuming command of the NYPD's 12th precinct as its first black female captain. Standing in front of her full-length mirror, Olivia meticulously adjusted her crisp white shirt and smoothed out her perfectly pressed navy slacks. Each movement was deliberate, a ritual to calm her nerves and prepare for the momentous day. As she looked at her reflection, she couldn't help but replay the arduous journey that had brought her to this pivotal moment. Growing up in the harsh environment of Harlem's housing projects, Olivia had learned early that the world often judged her by the color of her skin and the contours of her body, rather than her character and abilities. Her mother, a devoted nurse, and her father, a diligent postal worker, had imparted a relentless drive in her to overcome these barriers. Despite the numerous obstacles, Olivia's parents' sacrifices and steadfast support had been the bedrock of her determination. She had excelled in school, made her mark in the police academy, and climbed the ranks within the NYPD with sheer perseverance. Now, as she prepared to lead a precinct known for its entrenched traditions and resistance to change, Olivia was acutely aware that every decision she made would be scrutinized and every order questioned. The weight of her badge, which she fastened to her belt, felt more substantial than ever, a tangible symbol of the immense responsibility she was about to undertake. With one final glance at her reflection, Olivia took a deep breath, grabbed her keys, and stepped out the door, steeling herself for the challenges that awaited her. Across town, in a modest and cluttered Brooklyn apartment, rookie officer Emily Chen was preparing for her first day on active patrol. At 23, Emily embodied a blend of youthful idealism and a pragmatic understanding of the world. Her almond-shaped eyes, a legacy of her Chinese heritage, scanned her tiny room as she made a final check of her uniform. Everything had to be flawless for her inaugural shift. Emily's decision to join the police force sparked mixed reactions within her family. Her mother, a second-generation immigrant who successfully ran a restaurant in Chinatown, had offered her support but with an underlying current of concern. Her father, deeply scarred by his own experiences with racial discrimination, had opposed her choice vehemently. Despite this, Emily was resolute in her desire to be part of the change she envisioned, believing that her role in the police force could help bridge the divide between law enforcement and the communities they served. As she pinned her badge to her chest, Emily felt a mix of pride and trepidation. Today, she would be partnered with Sergeant Jack Sullivan, a seasoned officer with a reputation for a tough demeanor and an old-school approach to policing. Emily had heard the stories about Sullivan's methods, his gruffness, his reluctance to embrace modern reforms, and while she respected his extensive experience, she was apprehensive about how his style might clash with her ideals. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her gear and stepped out, ready to prove herself. In a modest house in Queens, Sergeant Jack Sullivan was already halfway through his second cup of coffee. At 54, Jack saw himself as a relic of a bygone era of policing, and he wore that distinction with pride. His weathered face, etched with the stress of 28 years on the force, stared back at him from the bathroom mirror as he splashed cold water on his face. Over the years, Jack had witnessed the city evolve, crime rates fluctuating, political winds shifting, and the department undergoing numerous changes. However, the recent appointment of a black woman as the new captain of his precinct left him feeling resentful. In Jack's view, policing was a profession suited to those who had endured the grittier aspects of life on the streets, and the new captain's appointment seemed to undermine his beliefs about who was fit for the job. As he meticulously adjusted his tie and holstered his gun, Jack's thoughts drifted to the rookie he was scheduled to train that day, a task he viewed with growing reluctance. The prospect of mentoring yet another recruit only added to his mounting frustration. In Jack's early days on the force, rookies were introduced to the gritty realities of the job through hard-earned experience, often learning from their own mistakes in the field. Nowadays, it seems that recruits emerge from the academy brimming with theoretical knowledge and lofty ideals, but lacking a genuine grasp of the moral ambiguities and tough decisions inherent to law enforcement. Jack grimaced as he finished his coffee, the bitter taste a stark reminder of his displeasure. He anticipated a long day ahead and had a nagging sense that this was only the start of a new era in policing, an era he wasn't entirely sure he was prepared for. As the morning traffic began to thicken, Captain Olivia Hawkins navigated her sleek black Audi through the labyrinthine streets of Manhattan. The car, a well-earned indulgence after years of relentless dedication and disciplined savings, was more than just a luxury. It was a symbol of her hard-fought success and a shield against the often harsh judgments of a world that frequently scrutinized her before understanding her. Olivia maneuvered through the endless parade of yellow taxis and delivery trucks with practiced ease, her mind racing through the various challenges awaiting her. Her recent appointment as captain had not been universally welcomed. She was acutely aware that many within the department viewed her promotion as a political maneuver rather than a merit-based advancement. Some saw her elevation as a strategic move by the higher-ups to appease ongoing debates about diversity and representation within law enforcement. Despite this, Olivia was resolute in her determination to prove her critics wrong. She had climbed the ranks through sheer grit, overcoming both systemic discrimination and personal doubt at every stage, and she was not about to be relegated to a symbolic figurehead. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Upon arriving at one police plaza, Olivia took a moment to steady herself. She had a crucial meeting scheduled with the police commissioner before she would head to her new precinct, and she knew that this meeting would set the tone for her entire tenure as captain. Adjusting her coat one last time, she stepped out of her car with purposeful strides, her heels clicking authoritatively on the pavement as she approached the imposing structure. Inside the bustling NYPD headquarters, the air was alive with the sounds of ringing phones and murmured conversations as officers and administrative staff hurried about their tasks. Navigating her way to the elevator, Olivia offered polite nods to those who recognized her. As the doors closed and the elevator began its ascent to the commissioner's office, she allowed herself a fleeting moment of pride. She had come a long way from the young girl in Harlem who spent hours watching police dramas on television, dreaming of the day she would wear the badge herself. Now, she wasn't just wearing the badge, she was leading others who did. The elevator chimed softly, jolting Olivia back to the present. As she stepped out into the plush corridor leading to the commissioner's office, her resolve solidified with each step. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was prepared to confront them head-on. Across town, Emily Chen was making her way to the 12th precinct. Her heart raced with a blend of excitement and anxiety. The precinct building, a formidable structure of brick and narrow windows, stood before her like a monolithic fortress. Taking a deep breath to calm her nerves, Emily pushed through the heavy doors and entered the frenetic environment of the station. The interior was a whirlwind of activity. Officers moved with purpose, phones rang incessantly, and the air was thick with the mingling sense of stale coffee, and the musty aroma of old paperwork. At the front desk, a seasoned sergeant glanced up at her with a mix of indifference and mild curiosity. "Officer Emily Chen reporting for duty, sir," she announced, her voice betraying only a hint of her nervousness. The sergeant grunted in acknowledgement and flipped through a clipboard. "Chen, right? You're with Sullivan today. Just try not to get in his way, rookie." Emily swallowed hard and nodded, feeling a surge of anxiety as she made her way to the briefing room. There, she found Sergeant Sullivan hunched over a detailed map spread across a large table. His gray hair, illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lighting, gave him a distinguished but stern appearance. As she approached, he looked up, his steely blue eyes scrutinizing her with a piercing intensity. "Chen, I assume," he said, his voice gruff and uninviting. "You're 2 minutes late. In this line of work, 2 minutes can make the difference between life and death. Don't let it happen again." Emily's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Yes, sir, I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again." Sullivan grunted in response and turned back to the map. "Today, we're patrolling Sector 4. It's a rough area teeming with drug dealers and unsavory characters. Keep your eyes peeled and your mouth shut. Stick to my head, and maybe you'll get through the day without us both ending up in a bad spot." As Sullivan continued his briefing, outlining trouble spots and persons of interest, Emily absorbed his every word. She was torn between admiration for his evident experience and discomfort with his harsh tone and sweeping generalizations. She couldn't help but wonder how this approach to policing influenced the community they were supposed to serve and protect. Meanwhile, Captain Olivia Hawkins was seated across from Police Commissioner Frank Donovan, a man whose gray hair and impeccably tailored suit exuded both authority and political acumen. The commissioner's office, with its rich wood-paneled walls and sweeping view of the city skyline, stood in stark contrast to the gritty precincts where Olivia had honed her skills. Captain Hawkins Donovan began, settling back into his leather chair with an air of practiced calm. "I won't beat around the bush. Your appointment has stirred up quite a bit of controversy. There are those within the department who feel you didn't earn this position." Olivia met his gaze with unwavering determination, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to conceal their slight tremor. "With all due respect, Commissioner, I've earned every accolade and promotion through hard work and dedication. I'm not here as a token gesture or a symbol. I'm here to lead and effect real change." Donovan regarded her with a small, approving smile. "That's exactly the mindset we need, Captain. But brace yourself, you'll be under intense scrutiny. Every decision you make and every action you take will be scrutinized and questioned. The old guard doesn't relinquish their grip easily, and they'll be watching for any misstep." Olivia leaned forward, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Sir, I've spent my entire career facing questions and challenges. This is nothing new to me. What is new is the opportunity to effect meaningful change and to demonstrate. Justice is a principle that must be applied with absolute fairness and consistency to every individual, regardless of their background or circumstances." Olivia was not only ready to embrace this challenge, but was also filled with an eagerness to get started. The commissioner took a moment to assess her, his gaze steady and contemplative, before he gave a nod that indicated his approval and confidence in her readiness. "Very well, Captain Hawkins," he said, his voice carrying a hint of gravity. "Let's see what you're capable of. Best of luck, you're going to need it." With that, Olivia exited the commissioner's office, her thoughts already buzzing with a myriad of plans and strategies. She understood that transforming the culture of an entire precinct would be a formidable task, fraught with obstacles and resistance. However, her resolve was unwavering. The first step on her agenda was to meet with her officers, to familiarize herself with the individuals who would be under her command, and to clearly articulate her expectations from the very beginning. As Olivia drove toward the 12th precinct, her emotions were a turbulent mix of anticipation and nervousness. This opportunity represented the culmination of her career aspirations, the chance to effect real, substantive change. Yet she was acutely aware of the hurdles that lay ahead. The 12th precinct was notorious for its antiquated methods, its resistance to modern practices, and its unwelcoming stance toward officers who deviated from the traditional mold. Olivia knew she would need to navigate a complex landscape of biases and entrenched attitudes while asserting the authority and respect that her new position required. Upon arriving at the precinct's parking lot, she took a moment to center herself. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, making sure her appearance was impeccable, every strand of hair in place, and her uniform perfectly pressed. She understood the importance of first impressions and was determined to project an image of competence and self-assurance as she entered the precinct. Drawing a deep breath, Olivia stepped out of her car and approached the precinct building. She could sense the eyes of both officers and civilians tracking her movements, their curiosity and speculative gazes palpable. With a determined set to her shoulders, she pushed open the main doors, steeling herself for the challenges that awaited her. At the same time, Emily Chen was experiencing her initial foray into the realities of patrolling, accompanied by Sergeant Sullivan. Their squad car crawled through the streets of Sector 4, a notorious area with a high crime rate and a fraught relationship with law enforcement. Emily observed the neighborhood through the passenger window, taking note of the graffiti-scarred walls, groups of young men hanging out on street corners, and the wary looks directed at their squad car. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Stay alert, Rookie Sullivan barked, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings with a vigilance born of experience. This area is a powder keg. One small spark, and it could all blow up. Emily nodded, her hand instinctively resting on her holstered weapon. She couldn't shake the feeling that Sullivan's demeanor might be contributing to the problem. The palpable tension between the police and the community seemed to be exacerbated by their approach marked by suspicion and hostility, and she wondered how trust could ever be fostered under such conditions. As they turned onto a particularly run-down street, Sullivan abruptly stiffened, his eyes narrowing with interest. Well, what do we have here?" he muttered, slowing the car. Emily followed his gaze to a cluster of teenagers loitering near the entrance of a dilapidated apartment building. Although their behavior wasn't overtly illegal, Sullivan appeared to have already concluded. "Time for some proactive policing, Chen," he declared, a hint of eager anticipation in his voice that unsettled Emily. "Watch and learn." Before Emily could voice any objections, Sullivan had parked the car and was stepping out, his hand casually resting on his holster. Emily followed, her heart pounding as she tried to recall her training on effective community interactions. As they approached the group of teenagers, the atmosphere shifted. What had been casual chatter turned to palpable tension. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Sullivan called out, his tone deceptively cordial. "Mind if we have a word?" The oldest member of the group, a wiry young man with a shaved head and a steely demeanor, took a step forward. His eyes, hardened by a mix of defiance and caution, locked onto Sullivan as he spoke. "We're not doing anything wrong, officer," he stated, his voice carrying a firmness that belied his unease. Sullivan's smile, though present, failed to reach his eyes, and his gaze remained unyielding. "Well now, nobody said you were," Sullivan replied, his tone laced with a subtle edge of challenge. "We're just here to ensure everything's in order. You wouldn't mind if we took a look in that backpack, would you?" Emily, observing the escalating confrontation with growing concern, saw the teenagers becoming increasingly agitated while Sullivan's demeanor grew more confrontational. She felt herself caught in the middle of a tense situation, unsure of how to diffuse it without appearing to undermine her partner. As the voices grew louder and the tension escalated, Emily made a split-second decision to intervene. Stepping forward, she adopted a calm and respectful tone, hoping to de-escalate the situation. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption," Emily said, her voice steady and soothing. "We're just conducting our routine patrol. If you're not involved in any illegal activity, we'll be on our way. Is there anything we can assist you with today?" The shift in Emily's tone was immediate and noticeable. The teenagers exchanged surprised glances, their initial hostility wavering. The leader of the group, though still guarded, visibly relaxed a fraction. "No, we're good," he said after a brief pause, his voice softer but still cautious. "Just hanging out, you know." Sullivan, clearly taken aback and fuming, shot Emily a look of disbelief and frustration. As they made their way back to the squad car, the tension between them was palpable. Once they were inside the vehicle, Sullivan erupted in anger. "What the hell was that, Chen?" he demanded, his voice sharp and laced with contempt. "You undermined me in front of those kids. Do you think being nice is going to keep you safe out here?" Emily met his glare with a calm, composed expression. "With all due respect, sir, escalating the situation wasn't going to help anyone. We didn't have probable cause, and antagonizing them only reinforces the negative perceptions of the police in this community." Sullivan's face flushed red with anger, his voice rising in intensity. "Listen here, rookie. I've been patrolling these streets long before you joined the force. You don't know a damn thing about real policing out here. It's us against them. The sooner you learn that, the longer you'll last." The rest of the patrol passed in a stifling silence, the air thick with unspoken tension. Emily's mind was abuzz with doubts and questions. She had joined the force with the hope of making a positive impact, of being part of a solution rather than perpetuating the problem. Yet now she questioned whether her idealism was merely a hindrance in the gritty reality of law enforcement. As the day wore on, Captain Olivia Hawkins immersed herself in the daily operations of the 12th Precinct. Her morning had been spent meeting with senior officers, outlining her vision for the precinct, and addressing their questions and concerns about her new leadership role. While some, such as Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez, had expressed open support, others, like Sergeant Mike Donovan, no relation to the commissioner, had remained politely skeptical. Now, as the afternoon sun cast its slanted rays through the blinds of her new office, Olivia was deeply engrossed in reviewing crime statistics and patrol reports. She sought to understand the patterns and challenges that defined her new command. Her concentration was broken by a knock on the door. "Come in," she called, looking up as Officer Tom Jenkins, a fresh-faced patrolman in his late 20s, stepped hesitantly into the room. Captain Jenkins began, his voice tinged with nerves and urgency. "There's something I think you should know." Olivia straightened in her chair, her full attention shifting to Jenkins. "Go ahead," she said, her tone inviting and attentive. Officer Jenkins took a deep, steadying breath before speaking. "Captain, it concerns Sergeant Sullivan," he began, his voice laden with hesitation. "I've been assigned to his patrol team for the past 6 months, and during that time, I've witnessed several actions that I believe are deeply troubling." Olivia's heart skipped a beat, a knot of worry tightening in her chest. She had heard whispers about Sullivan's conduct, but had hoped those were just unfounded rumors. "What exactly have you seen?" she asked, trying to keep her voice even and calm. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Jenkins, a young officer with a palpable sense of unease, struggled to find the right words. "Well, Sergeant Sullivan has a very particular way of handling certain neighborhoods and specific groups of people. It's almost as if he presumes everyone is guilty until proven innocent, and sometimes..." He hesitated, looking down. "He crosses lines. He, takes things too far." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "In what way does he take things too far?" Jenkins swallowed hard, his face flushed with anxiety. "He's been involved in planting evidence, ma'am." I witnessed him doing it once he placed a small amount of drugs on a suspect. He justified it as a means to clean up the streets. I felt helpless and unsure of how to respond. The weight of Jenkins's revelation settled heavily in Olivia's stomach. This was the exact type of misconduct she had pledged to eradicate from the force. "You've done the right thing by bringing this to my attention, Jenkins," she said firmly. "I will handle this personally. For now, keep this information confidential and do not discuss it with anyone." Jenkins nodded, visibly relieved to have unburdened himself. As he left, Olivia faced the daunting challenge she had anticipated but had hoped would come later. How could she address corruption within the department without alienating her team or disrupting the force's morale? How could she change an ingrained culture of us versus them? Lost in thought, Olivia's phone rang. It was the dispatcher, reporting an escalating situation in Sector 4. A patrol unit had been involved in a tense confrontation with a group of young men, and the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Olivia's heart sank when she heard the names of the officers involved: Sergeant Sullivan and Officer Chen. "I'm on my way," Olivia replied, already standing and grabbing her coat. As she rushed to her car, she felt the weight of her responsibilities more acutely than ever. This incident could very well be the defining moment of her tenure as captain. It was time to act decisively and demonstrate her leadership. Upon arriving at the scene, Olivia was met with a chaotic tableau. A crowd had gathered, smartphones raised, capturing the scene where several officers were surrounding two young men in handcuffs. Sergeant Sullivan was at the center, his face flushed with anger as he barked orders. Officer Chen stood to the side, looking visibly distressed and conflicted. Olivia stepped out of her car, her authoritative presence immediately commanding attention. "What's happening here?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the noise and confusion. Sullivan turned to face her, a mixture of surprise and then defiance crossing his features. "Captain, we're managing a drug bust." "Everything is under control," Sullivan replied, his tone defensive. Olivia scanned the scene, her eyes sharp as she noted the absence of any visible evidence. "Where are the drugs, Sergeant?" she inquired. A tense silence followed as Sullivan hesitated before pointing to a small bag lying on the ground. "Right there, Mom. We found it on them." Olivia approached the bag, her mind racing. She crouched down, picked up the bag, and examined it closely. To the astonishment of everyone present, she opened it and poured the contents onto the ground. A small pile of flour spilled out, not drugs. The crowd gasped, and the young men in handcuffs looked on with a mix of relief and disbelief. Olivia's face was a mask of grim determination as she realized the depth of the corruption she was facing. This was more than a single instance of misconduct. It was a systemic issue that needed immediate and thorough addressing. Sergeant Olivia's voice was dangerously calm as she addressed the situation. "You detained these young men for possession of flour." Her question was met with murmurs from the crowd, many of whom continued to record the unfolding drama with their smartphones. Sullivan stood there, his face a mask of disbelief, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly as he struggled to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Turning her attention to Officer Emily Chen, Olivia's command was swift and decisive. "Officer Chen, release these young men immediately." Emily, with a look of determination, moved quickly to remove the handcuffs from the young man's wrists. They rubbed their sore wrists and looked at Olivia with a mix of astonishment and gratitude, their expressions reflecting their relief. Olivia then addressed Sergeant Sullivan with a commanding presence. "Sergeant Sullivan, hand over your badge and your weapon," she ordered firmly. "You're suspended pending a full investigation." Sullivan, finally regaining his composure, protested vehemently. "You can't do this. I've got 28 years on this force." Olivia's response was laden with disappointment and frustration. "In 28 years, you haven't learned that we must protect and serve, not to harass and oppress. You've disgraced this badge and everything it stands for." As Sullivan was escorted away by other officers, Olivia turned to face the crowd that had gathered. Her voice was steady and authoritative as she addressed them. "I apologize for what happened here today. This is not the kind of policing I will tolerate in my precinct. I promise you all that there will be changes, real, lasting changes." As the crowd began to slowly disperse, many still recording and discussing the events they had witnessed, Olivia approached Emily Chen. "Officer Chen, I'd like to hear your full account of what happened here," Olivia said. Emily nodded, her relief palpable but tinged with anxiety. "Yes, Mom. I tried to stop things from escalating." Olivia placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "You did the right thing by questioning inappropriate actions, Officer Chen. Integrity like yours is exactly what we need on this force." As they drove back to the precinct, Olivia contemplated the long road ahead. Transforming the culture of an entire institution was no small feat. There would undoubtedly be resistance, setbacks, and moments of doubt along the way. But looking at Emily's determined face, Olivia glimpsed the future she aspired to: a police force that genuinely served and protected every member of the community, irrespective of race, color, or background. By the time Olivia returned to her office, the sun had set, casting a golden hue over the city. She sank heavily into her chair, the weight of the day's events pressing down on her. Her phone rang, and the voice on the other end was Commissioner Donovan. "I heard about the incident today," Captain Donovan said, his tone neutral but tinged with curiosity. "You certainly stirred things up on your first day." Olivia took a deep breath before responding. "I did what was necessary, sir. If we're going to make real change, we have to start somewhere." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Donovan spoke again. "You're right, Captain. This will ruffle some feathers, but you have my full support. Keep up the good work." As Olivia ended the call, a wave of relief and renewed determination washed over her. The road ahead promised to be challenging, but she was prepared to face it head-on. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to make a meaningful difference. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Meanwhile, in her modest apartment, Emily Chen sat on her bed, replaying the day's events in her mind. Her aspiration to make a difference seemed to have been fulfilled today. The gratitude she had seen in the young men's eyes when the handcuffs were removed, and the strength and integrity displayed by Captain Olivia, all reinvigorated her passion for her chosen profession. Emily picked up her phone and dialed her parents. When her mother answered, Emily's voice was filled with quiet confidence. "Mom, I think I did the right thing today." Across town, the former Sergeant Sullivan sat alone in a dimly lit bar, staring into his whiskey glass with a mix of frustration and regret. 28 years of service, and for what? All gone in an instant. Part of him recognized that he had crossed a line, that his actions were indefensible. Yet another part, shaped by years of bitterness and cynicism, still clung to the belief that he was merely doing his job in the only way he knew. On the streets of Sector 4, news of the incident spread rapidly. Videos of the confrontation circulated on social media, igniting passionate discussions and a cautious sense of optimism among residents. For the first time in a long while, some began to believe that change was possible, and that perhaps the future could indeed be brighter. The following morning, Olivia arrived at the precinct well before dawn, her mind already racing with the anticipation of the challenges that lay ahead. She understood that this day would test her resolve like never before. Questions from skeptical officers, media inquiries demanding answers, and the weight of the recent decision still heavy on her shoulders. Yet, she also recognized that the actions she had taken were pivotal, marking the first significant step toward the transformative change she envisioned for the precinct. Upon entering her office, Olivia was greeted by a stack of reports meticulously arranged on her desk, alongside a freshly brewed cup of coffee. The aroma of the coffee was a small comfort amidst the chaos. Resting next to the cup was a handwritten note: "Thank you for giving us hope." Officer Chen. Olivia's heart warmed as she read the message. The note was from Emily Chen, a trusted ally and a beacon of support during these tumultuous times. The gesture reassured Olivia that despite the uphill battle she faced, she was not alone. She took a moment to savor the coffee's warmth and comfort, drawing strength from the small, yet significant, gesture of camaraderie. At exactly 9 a.m., Olivia summoned all the precinct's officers for a general meeting. The briefing room quickly filled with officers, the atmosphere charged with a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and for some, barely veiled hostility. Olivia entered with a sense of purpose, her eyes scanning the room as she took her place at the front. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice steady and authoritative. "I am aware that many of you have pressing questions regarding the events of yesterday. I want to address these concerns openly. The decision regarding Sergeant Sullivan was not made lightly. It was not an indictment of the precinct's operations, but a necessary action in response to behavior that undermines the integrity of our force and endangers our community." A low murmur spread through the room, but Olivia pressed on with determination. "We are embarking on a new chapter for this precinct, one defined by transparency, accountability, and a commitment to justice for every individual we are sworn to protect and serve. This journey will require us to critically examine our current practices, confront our biases, and, in some cases, fundamentally alter our approach to policing." She paused, allowing her words to resonate before continuing. "Change can be intimidating. I recognize that many of you may fear that these new expectations will make your jobs more challenging or hazardous. However, I ask you to consider this when we build trust with the community, when we are seen as partners rather than adversaries. Doesn't that make our work both safer and more fulfilling?" Olivia noticed some tentative nods among the officers, including an encouraging smile from Emily Chen, positioned at the back of the room. "In the days ahead, I will meet with each of you individually. I want to hear your concerns, ideas, and aspirations for the future of this precinct. Together, we have the opportunity to reshape this force into one that not only maintains the peace, but also champions justice and equality for all." As the meeting concluded, Olivia sensed a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. While skepticism and resistance remained palpable, she also observed glimmers of hope and determination. This was just the beginning of a challenging but necessary journey. Over the subsequent weeks, Olivia immersed herself in implementing the changes she had outlined. She introduced comprehensive new training programs focused on community engagement and bias awareness, designed to foster a deeper understanding of the communities they served. A community advisory board was established to facilitate an open dialogue between the police and residents, ensuring that the voices of those affected by policing practices were heard and considered. Olivia, leading by example, frequently joined patrols, demonstrating the respectful and empathetic interactions she expected from her officers. The path to reform was fraught with obstacles. Resistance came from within the force, and external challenges arose as well. Some seasoned officers chose early retirement rather than adapting to the new expectations. The police union, concerned about the impact on officers' authority, voiced strong opposition to some of the policy changes. Nevertheless, Olivia's efforts yielded tangible results. Gradually, the statistics began to reflect positive changes. Complaints against officers decreased, crime resolution rates improved, and most significantly, a new dynamic emerged between the police and the community. Where distrust and fear had once prevailed, there was now a budding sense of partnership and mutual respect. Emily Chen, in particular, flourished under the new leadership. Her empathetic approach and skill in de-escalating tense situations set a high standard for the precinct, embodying the spirit of the reform Olivia had championed. Olivia observed her protégé with immense pride, seeing in her the embodiment of the future she envisioned for the police force she was dedicated to shaping. 6 months into her role, Olivia had been invited to speak at a prestigious national conference focused on police reform. As she prepared for her speech, she reflected on the significant journey she had embarked upon not just over the past half year, but throughout her entire career in law enforcement. When I first donned the uniform, Olivia began, her gaze sweeping over the audience of officers, politicians, and community activists. I did so with a deep belief in the law's power to protect and serve. Throughout the years, I have witnessed the full spectrum of what our profession can be. I've seen officers risk their lives selflessly to save others, and I've also seen those who have abused their authority, harming the very citizens they pledged to protect. She paused for a moment, her eyes meeting those of various audience members, absorbing their reactions. What I have learned is that enforcing the law is not enough. We must become guardians of justice, advocates for equality, and builders of bridges within our communities. This responsibility goes beyond mere tactical skills or legal knowledge. It demands empathy, understanding, and an unwavering commitment to continuous learning and growth. As Olivia continued her speech, she detailed the changes she had implemented within her precinct and shared the positive outcomes that had emerged. She could see that her audience was engaged, with many taking notes and listening intently. Although she knew her progressive approach was met with mixed reactions, she felt confident that she was planting the seeds of transformation that could extend far beyond her precinct. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Concluding her speech, Olivia looked directly into the camera broadcasting the event live. True public safety does not stem from fear or force. It is cultivated through trust, mutual respect, and a shared dedication to justice. It is time for us to redefine what it means to protect and serve. We need to build a police force that is genuinely integrated with the community, rather than existing in isolation from it. Together, we can forge a justice system that upholds equality and dignity for everyone. The room erupted into applause as Olivia finished her address. She felt a surge of emotions: pride in her accomplishments, gratitude for the support of her colleagues and community members who had embraced her vision, and a renewed determination to tackle the challenges that lay ahead. Back at the precinct, Officer Emily Chen watched the live broadcast of Olivia's speech with several of her fellow officers. As the broadcast concluded, Emily observed the thoughtful and inspired expressions on her colleagues' faces. "That's why I became a cop," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Her comment was heard by Officer Jenkins, who was sitting beside her. With a warm smile, Jenkins responded, "You know, Chen, I think that's why we all became cops. We just needed someone to remind us." Meanwhile, across town, former Sergeant Sullivan was also watching Olivia's speech. His emotions were a tangled mix of resentment, regret, and, unexpectedly, a touch of grudging admiration. While part of him remained skeptical, believing Olivia's methods might make officers vulnerable and jeopardize public safety, another part, one he seldom acknowledged, wondered if perhaps she was onto something. With a heavy heart, Sullivan turned off the TV and picked up a framed photo of his graduation from the police academy. As he gazed at his younger self, full of idealism and hope, he pondered when he had lost sight of the true meaning of the badge he once wore. After a moment of contemplation, he placed the photo back on the shelf and picked up his phone. After a brief pause, he dialed a number. "Hello, is this the alcohol and drug rehab program? I think I need help." Elsewhere, at a newly renovated community center in Sector 4, a group of young people gathered for a discussion. Marcus, one of the young men who had been wrongfully detained on the day Olivia took command, was leading the conversation on improving relations between local youth and the police. "Look, I know that trust in the cops isn't universal," Marcus said to the group, "and that's understandable given the past. But things are shifting. The new captain, She's genuinely working to make a difference, and some officers, like Officer Chen, really care. A girl at the back of the room raised her hand. But how do we know this will last? What if it's just a temporary front? Marcus nodded in acknowledgement of the valid concern. That's why we need to stay involved, attend community meetings, voice our concerns when necessary, but also recognize and support the progress being made. Real change takes time, but it only occurs if we work together. As the discussion continued, Emily Chen drove her squad car slowly by the community center, observing the group through the window. Smiling to herself, she recalled how a few months prior, a similar scene would have been met with suspicion. Now, it symbolized hope and progress. She keyed the radio dispatch, her voice clear and steady. "This is Officer Chen. All is quiet in Sector 4. Community engagement is strong. Continuing patrol." Back at the precinct, Olivia finally returned from the conference, feeling both exhausted and invigorated. As she walked into her office, the familiar surroundings offered a sense of comfort. On her desk, a stack of letters awaited her attention. Intrigued, Olivia began to sift through them, one by one. The first letter was from a resident who expressed heartfelt gratitude for the positive changes they had noticed in their neighborhood. The resident detailed how the new initiatives and community outreach efforts had made a tangible difference in their daily lives, fostering a renewed sense of safety and connection. Olivia's heart swelled with warmth as she read the sincere appreciation. The second letter came from a veteran officer who had initially been skeptical of Olivia's reforms. The officer described how, over time, his reluctance had transformed into genuine admiration and respect. He acknowledged the difficulty of the changes and praised Olivia's steadfast commitment to improving the police force. This letter was a testament to the shift in perspective that Olivia's leadership had catalyzed, and it deeply resonated with her. The third letter was from a young student eager to learn more about internship opportunities at the precinct. The students' enthusiasm and interest in law enforcement were evident, and they expressed a desire to contribute to the positive changes Olivia was championing. Reading this letter, Olivia felt a surge of hope for the future generation of officers who would carry forward the values she was striving to instill. As Olivia continued to read each letter, a profound wave of emotion washed over her. The tangible impact of her work was becoming increasingly clear. She recognized that while the journey was far from complete and numerous challenges lay ahead, these letters were a powerful reminder of the difference she was making. Feeling a mixture of resolve and reflection, Olivia reached for a pen and began to write a note to herself. It was a message to anchor her during the inevitable tough days that would come. The true power of a badge lies not in the authority it confers, but in the responsibility it represents. Every day is an opportunity to earn the community's trust, to uplift those around us, and to be the change we wish to see in the world. The work never truly ends, but every step in the right direction counts. Keep walking, keep believing, keep serving. With a determined smile, Olivia placed the note in her desk drawer, where it would serve as a daily reminder of her mission. She turned off the office light, the room dimming as she prepared to leave. As she stepped out into the cool night air, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and fresh opportunities, and Olivia was ready to confront them head-on, step by step. She was committed to continuing her journey toward creating a police force that genuinely served and protected everyone, fueled by the knowledge that she was on the right path. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the journey through Captain Olivia Hawkins and Officer Emily Chen's first days insightful and inspiring. These stories highlight the challenges and triumphs of those who strive to make a difference, even in the face of significant obstacles. What have you learned from their experiences so far? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share one key takeaway from this video and how you plan to apply it in your own life in the comments below. Your insights can inspire others and help build a supportive community. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content that uplifts and encourages. Your support means the world to us. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you in the comments. Until next time, stay motivated and keep making a positive impact in your way.